I want you to think about the last Christopher Nolan film you watched. Did you catch everything people said? Because if you didn't, you're not alone. The complaints about Nolan's sound mixing are basically their own genre at this point. Every single film, the same convo. Why can't I hear what anyone is saying? I used to feel the same way. I watched Interstellar and missed half of what McConaughey said in the cockpit scenes. I watched Tenet and gave up trying to follow the dialogue in the second act. I first assumed it was the cinema's speakers. Then I just accepted that it was a me problem and moved on. And then I found out something that changed the whole picture for me. Every single thing you struggled to hear was on purpose. Nolan knows exactly what he's doing. He spent months on those mixes. He visited multiple cinemas personally to hear how each film sounded to a real audience. He defended every decision publicly when the complaints came in. Once I understood why, I couldn't be frustrated anymore. I was just impressed. The complaints started with Bane.
The next step of your master plan.
Crashing this plane.
The Dark Knight Rises. That voice coming through a mask. Audiences leaning forward in cinemas around the world trying to piece together what he was actually saying. The early IMAX preview of the opening scene caused such a serious wave of complaints that the mix was adjusted a bit before the final release. Then came Interstellar in 2014, and this time a cinema in Rochester, New York did something extraordinary. After receiving so many complaints from customers, they put up a sign at the box office that read, "Please note that all of our sound equipment is functioning properly." Christopher Nolan makes the soundtrack with an emphasis on the music. This is how it is intended to sound. It sounds funny, but I think they are so real for that. Then Dunkirk came. Then Tenet, which pushed the complaints further than any previous film, mine included, because I thought I had an issue hearing or something. Forbes critic Scott Mendelson even wrote in his Tenet review, "I don't know what Chris Nolan has against dialogue." Nolan knew about all of it. He got personal calls from fellow filmmakers about it. He told author Tom Schoen in the book The Nolan Variations, "I actually got calls from other filmmakers who would say, 'I just saw your film and the dialogue is inaudible.'" Some people thought maybe the music's too loud, but the truth was it was kind of the whole enchilada of how we had chosen to mix it. Most directors would have backed down after Interstellar, but Nolan doubled down. In 2014, right in the middle of the Interstellar backlash, Nolan sat down with The Hollywood Reporter and said something that reframed everything. There are particular moments in this film where I decided to use dialogue as a sound effect. So sometimes it's mixed slightly underneath the other sound effects or in the other sound effects to emphasize how loud the surrounding noise is. I don't agree with the idea that you can only achieve clarity through dialogue. Clarity of story, clarity of emotions, I try to achieve that in a very layered way using all the different things at my disposal, picture and sound. Dialogue as a sound effect. He treats the human voice the way he treats background music and noise. He also said something in that same interview that most people missed. He described his approach to Interstellar's sound as wanting the audience to experience the journey the character is on. That is a completely different objective. His longtime sound designer, Richard King, who worked on Dunkirk, Inception, Interstellar, and The Dark Knight, explained the philosophy in a Reddit AMA. Chris is trying to create a visceral, emotional experience for the audience, beyond merely an intellectual one. Like punk rock music, it's a full-body experience, and dialogue is only one facet of the sonic palette. He wants to grab the audience by the lapels and pull them toward the screen, and not allow the watching of his film to be a passive experience. A full-body experience. A film you live inside for 2 hours. And the way he actually builds that is stranger than you'd expect. There are 3 tools Nolan uses with sound that most directors never attempt, let alone attempt together. And once you understand all 3, the complaints start to sound like people complaining that a roller coaster made them feel dizzy. Like, what did you actually expect? The first tool, you already know. Voice as one instrument among many. Not the lead, just one layer. The second is something called a shepherd tone. That sound is an audio illusion named after cognitive scientist Roger Shepard. The technical explanation is complicated. The important part is that your brain hears a sound that's constantly climbing, but never arrives anywhere. It feels like tension without release. Think of it as a bad cough stuck in your chest and not wanting to be free. If you've sat through any Nolan film, you already know exactly what that feels like. Nolan has used this across The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. He told Business Insider about Dunkirk, "There's an audio illusion, if you will, in music called a Shepard tone. It's an illusion where there's a continuing ascension of tone. It's a corkscrew effect. It's always going up and up and up, but it never goes outside of its range. I wrote the Dunkirk script according to that principle." He structured the entire film to mirror the Shepard tone. 3 interlocking timelines, the mole spanning a week, the sea spanning a day, the air spanning an hour, all converging at once. The story is built like the sound illusion underneath it. And then there's what he did with Interstellar's organ. Zimmer recorded it at a temple church in London and pushed it to the absolute lowest note the instrument could make. Nolan told Tom Schoen, "A lot of it was the music where Hans had this organ and he used the absolutely lowest note, which would literally make your chest drop. There are certain low-end frequencies that automatically get filtered out by the software. He took all of those controls off, so there are all those sub-frequencies there. He removed the filters that normally protect cinema speakers from producing sounds at frequencies that hit your chest instead of your ears. He wanted the film to be felt physically." The third tool is the quietest one, and the one most people never think about. Nolan refuses ADR. ADR is automated dialogue replacement, the standard Hollywood process where actors come back after filming and re-record their lines in a clean recording booth. The result is dialogue that is polished and crystal clear. Most big-budget films use it extensively. Nolan won't. He told Variety, "I like to use the performance that was given in the moment rather than the actor revoice it later," which is an artistic choice that some people disagree with, and that's their right. There's also a practical reason the refusal causes problems. Nolan shoots extensively on IMAX cameras, which are enormous and mechanical and loud. In quieter scenes, the camera noise itself bleeds into the audio. Most directors would fix this in post with ADR. Nolan keeps the original take, noise and all, because he believes the performance captured in the moment is more alive than anything recorded in a soundproofed booth afterwards. Every time you struggle to hear a Nolan line, you're hearing what the set actually sounded like. And that is exactly what he wants. Dunkirk is where all 3 of these tools come together so completely that the film barely feels like a film at all. There's almost no dialogue in the first 10 minutes. What you get instead is the sound of leaflets drifting across cobblestones, water leaking from a hose somewhere down an empty street, little sounds of a city that has already emptied out, and then gunfire. No soft music to prepare you. The Shepard tone starts almost immediately, and it doesn't stop for nearly 2 hours. Hans Zimmer built the entire score around it, layer by layer. The rhythmic foundation of the whole score came from Nolan's own pocket watch. He recorded the ticking and sent it to Zimmer as the starting point. Every tick is a second. Every second on those beaches was a life. Richard King described what Nolan asked for from the opening beach scene. Christopher wanted the opening scene on the beach, even though there are thousands of men, to be almost surreally quiet. That's because they're all straining their ears to hear, waiting for that howl of the fighter planes, and hoping it's not coming. And the audience strains to hear for exactly the same reason the soldiers do. The Shepard tone makes your nervous system feel like something terrible is permanently approaching. The missing dialogue means you're in the chaos with them rather than watching the chaos from far away. It's like you're watching a movie in virtual reality. Now, the main question is whether this holds up across every film. And honestly, it doesn't always. I want to be honest here, this approach is extraordinary when it works. Even if Dunkirk isn't your thing, Interstellar is proof enough. There are sequences in those films that land in a way conventional sound design simply cannot reach. But Tenet went too far. Even people who had defended every previous Nolan film agreed that Tenet's mix was a different problem. And the reason it crossed the line is actually pretty simple. Tenet is a spy thriller built entirely on information. The plot is dense, the exposition is constant, and the audience genuinely needs to follow what characters are being told in order for anything else to make sense. When you bury that information in noise, you're creating confusion between the film and the viewer. And boy did it work. I deadass was confused throughout the entire movie. Nolan himself acknowledged the scale of the complaints in the Nolan variations. We got a lot of complaints. It was a very, very radical mix. I was a little shocked to realize how conservative people are when it comes to sound. Because you can make a film that looks like anything. You can shoot it on your iPhone, no one is going to complain. But if you mix the sound a certain way, or if you use certain subfrequencies, people get up in arms. And there's evidence he heard it. Oppenheimer, despite being a 3-hour dialogue-driven film, was widely noted as his clearest sound mix in years. Critics who had complained about every previous film acknowledged they could actually follow the conversations. Even the Trinity test sequence with its enormous sound design around it had no ADR and still worked because the emotional stakes of that scene depend on you feeling the weight of the moment. The philosophy is brilliant. Tenet is what happens when you're trying to bite more than you can chew. Great movie, but that technique was overdone. This particular technique wasn't even the most fascinating thing I discovered. Most directors think of sound as a delivery system. Well, I don't blame them. I used to think so too before experiencing Nolan. The scene happens, the music scores it, the dialogue explains it. Everything has a clear function. Nolan thinks of sound as an experience. The difference between those two approaches is huge. A delivery system gives you information about what's happening on screen. An experience makes you feel like you're inside of what's happening on screen. Think about your last live concert where the bass was so loud you felt it in your chest before you even registered the music. Think about how a particular song can pull you back to a specific memory, a specific moment, a specific feeling in under 2 seconds. Sound bypasses thought. It always has. Nolan built an entire filmmaking philosophy on that fact. And the reason his films feel different from other blockbusters, the reason people describe sitting in Dunkirk as almost physically exhausting in a way other war films aren't, is because you're actually living it and not just watching it alone. Whether Tenet went too far or not, the underlying idea is one of the most honest things any director has committed to. And once you understand it, you'll feel it in every film you watch from here on. Next time you sit in a Nolan film and miss a line of dialogue, don't ask your friend for what they said. Just feel what the scene is doing to your body. The answer you're looking for probably isn't in the words anyway. If this is your type of thing, be sure to check out our previous video, Why Movies Don't Look Like Movies Anymore. Trust me, it's just as thrilling. Stay tuned.